Okay, so handrail and guardrail. Let's talk about when are handrail and guardrail required. Kind of the two main points. You could go look at whatever project you got, and if you have 4 or more risers, meaning your steps have 4 or more risers in them, you need handrail. If your fall, if you got a deck, a balcony, mezzanine, anything like that above the stairs, if the fall is over 30 inches and it's considered a walking surface, then you need guardrail. So those are like the two key components. 4 or more risers, and a fall over 30 inches, you need handrail / guardrail. Okay, so we'll dive into the code book and I'll kind of read it to you, and then we'll hop into some pictures and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. But in a nutshell, if you've got those two conditions, you either need handrail, need guardrail. Handrail is required on only one side on a run of stairs, and guardrail needs to be 36 inches tall with no gaps greater than 4 inches. So if you can put a 4-inch sphere through some pickets or something, it's too big. So it needs to be smaller than that. Plan on 3 7/8 or 3 1/2, 3 5/8 for your picket dimensions, and you should be good to go. But let's dive into it so you know where I'm coming from on it and you have an idea as you design your handrail and your guardrail for whatever project you're working on. We're going to start with guardrail. So guardrail, here is the code requirement on it. So I'm just kind of reiterating. If you have guards shall be provided for those portions of open-sided walking surfaces, including stairs, ramps, or landings, that are located more than 30 inches measured vertically. So there's your 30-inch fall. And it says in here, vertically to the floor or grade below at any point within 36 inches horizontally the edge of an open side. So in a residential situation, you're not going to run into this very often, if at all. Maybe outside or in your yard, you have a swale with a retaining wall, and that retaining wall is like a 4-foot drop, but it's not considered a walking surface, and so you wouldn't need a guardrail on it. But in a house, anytime you have a fall over 30 inches, I mean, pretty much everywhere in your house is a walking surface in some way, shape, or form. Same would be like in a balcony or a loft, on a deck. All those would be considered walking surfaces, and you'd have to provide guards for them. Now going downstairs, that guard height can actually lower to 34 inches. So guards on open sides of stairs shall have a height not less than 34 inches. And that's because it helps coincide with the handrail that would be required. Because typically, if you have 4 risers at 7 3/4 max, you're going to be hitting right there at that 30-inch mark, which is going to kick guardrails in. And so here they're telling you that where the top of the guard serves as the handrail, you can be between 34 and 38 inches. Well, because that's handrail height. Handrail is a max of 34 to 38 inches measured above the stair nose. And then here we talk about the opening limitations. So here's that 4-inch max sphere I was talking about. So guardrails, if they have pickets in them or some type of decorative face as part of the guard, you can't have any openings over 4. And here's what it says. Required guards shall not have openings from the walking surface to the required guard height that allow passage of a sphere 4 inches in diameter. Now, that's for standard guards. That's on a deck, any situation where you just have a guardrail. Now, we're going up and down stairs where they're allowing you to maybe use the top of a guardrail as your handrail. They're kind of reiterating or changing the requirements on the pickets, and that little gap, that little triangle gap where the stair is, it's going to be bigger than 4 inches. And so here's what they're allowing. The triangular opening on the open side of a stair shall not allow passage of a sphere 6 inches in diameter. Now, honestly, as an inspector, I've never actually measured that because it kind of is what it is. I mean, if you run the bottom of your guardrail right up, if it's touching your stairs, that little triangle is what it is. They also allow the guard opening to be 4 3/8 inches instead of 4. I don't know why they do that. If it was me, I would just plan on that, 3 7/8 across my whole project so everything looks uniform. But that would be guards, right? So we're kind of covering the requirements of guards. And now you can see what I'm talking about. So here's your guard, 36 inches minimum. So not 35, not 35 and a half. You want that guard to be 36 inches. It's a fall hazard. It's a safety thing. And you want to just make sure that you're covering your bases. Here's that 4-inch max sphere, right, in a guard. But then when you hop down here, when you're on the stairs, this guard can be between 34 and 38 because it's part of the handrail. So you can see these pickets, and you can see here it can be 4 3/8. It can get a little bit bigger. Now this little triangle right in here, right between this line, is where they're telling you can have 6 inches. And again, I've never really measured it myself because it kind of is what it is. Now, when you're measuring the tops of guards or the tops of handrails, it's always from the stair nose. I've had homeowners or contractors get confused and they will measure it from any point in the tread here, and it's always measured from this nose. So that way it's always uniform. So you could start right here and you just work your way up. You could pick a point up here on this nose, measure it up, and then you get your straight line. You can mark it on the wall or wherever you're putting it, and you're good to go. So that would kind of cover the basis on guardrails. So here would be like a deck with guardrail on both sides. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like maybe 6 risers, so they would need handrail, and that would probably kick in the guards on both sides. This particular picture this could be a handrail. You'd have to have a little bit more in depth, and I'll show you a picture of the different types of handrails you could have, but it has to be grippable. Okay, so make sure that your handrail is grippable. Here's another guard, so you can kind of see people have pickets, and then they're using the top of it as the handrail. Handrail can't have any breaks in it unless it's at a landing. And I'm going to dive into the handrail code book here in a sec, or code side of things as well, but you can't have any breaks in that handrail. So if there was like a newel post right here in the middle, well, then you'd probably have to put your handrail over here on the wall. But they do allow, like that particular picture showed, they do allow you to be between 34 and 38 on your guard going downstairs, and that's to coincide with handrail. So handrail, like we said, if you have 4 or more risers, you need handrail, and you need it on one side. Okay, and here's where it says handrail height measured vertically from the sloped plane adjoining the tread nosing. So there it is, talking about measure from the nose only, or finished surface of a ramp. So obviously a ramp's continuous, you can pick any particular point. Shall be not less than 34 inches and not more than 38 inches. And that's measured to the top of it. So we have handrail projection. So handrail shall not project more than 4.5 inches on either side of the stairwell. And so when we talked a little bit about stairs and needing to be 36 inches wide in the video before, you also can have that projection, whether or not it's 1 or 2 handrails. You're only required to have 1, but those can project up to 4.5 inches. Exceptions where the nosing of the landing floor or passing flights project into the stairway, reducing the clearance of passing handrail. Handrails shall project not more than 6.5 inches. I don't know that you have to worry too much about that. You're going to go buy, wherever box store you go to, you're probably going to end up buying just some standard handrail brackets. They're going to be set up to give you that 1.5 inch minimum that you need off the wall or your guardrail. And then as long as you have an approved handrail, you should be good to go. Here's continuity. So handrail, let me back up. So I just talked about the 1.5 inch. So handrails adjacent to a wall shall have a space not less than 1.5 inches between the wall and the handrail, like I just said. And then continuity. Handrails shall be continuous for the full length of the flight, from the point directly above the top riser to the flight to the point directly above the lowest riser of the flight. Handrail ends shall be returned or shall terminate to newel posts or safety terminals. So they must be continuous and they must return to the wall. So what does that mean? So like I kind of said earlier, continuous means there's no breaks in it. Now that's in a run of stairs. So if you have a full run of stairs, that handrail has to run from top to bottom. If it's sitting above a guardrail, a newel post, or some break in it can't happen. Meaning if somebody's walking down those stairs, they're able to grab that handrail and they don't have to let go of it for any means until they would get to the bottom or the next landing. So if you get to a landing, which is a minimum 3 by 3, right? It's as wide as the stairs and 3 foot out. Once you get to a landing, you don't have to have handrail. You can have a break. You can stop. And then it can start again if you have another set of stairs. But that handrail must return to the wall. It has to be complete run when you're on those stairs if there's 4 or more risers. So I've been into houses where maybe you have like 3 steps and then you hit a landing and then you turn and go down a long run of stairs. We don't need any handrail on the three risers because it's under 4. You don't need it on the landing, but you need it on the long run of stairs. So when you're planning out how your stairs lay out, maybe you don't like handrail or something, break it up if you can, right? Well, three risers and hit a landing and go 3 more risers. You're good to go. You don't need any handrail. Let's look at let's keep going here. Let's look at, so we looked at all this. So we have handrail in here. Like I said, handrail top to bottom, no breaks, between 34 and 38 to the top. So here are the shapes. Most people use, your standard round handrail, right? And it's 1.5 inches off the wall. Maybe you've used like I've seen like a cedar 2x6 that's grooved on one side or both sides. So here it'd be like both. Here's one, and it makes it grippable. It allows you to meet that requirement. You can't just take a 2x4 or a 2x6 and slap it up there and throw a couple nails in it. It's not grippable at that point, right? It's smooth. It's something that you could slide down. It needs to be something you can grab onto. Here's kind of decorative handrails with some minimum requirements, right? Maximum cross-section dimension 2 5/8, maximum gripping surface 4.5, and on and on. If you go to any type of hardware store or any type of lumber store, if you're going to buy a handrail in there, they're going to have, most likely what's approved. They're not going to sell you something that's not an approved material when it comes to handrail. If you are concerned, you can definitely check out this little illustration. You can see right here they've crossed out, right? Just the 2x4, 2x6 with nothing grippable is not allowed. Otherwise, you should be good to go. Different types of attachment methods that you can see, and you should be fine. So let's look at some pictures. So here's kind of a picture of showing, this is kind of a funky looking rail, and you're like, well, why would somebody do this, right? Well, because it needs to be continuous. There must not be a situation where they have a landing, so they set it up so that someone can grab onto it. If you were to go to, say, this set of stairs, it's a little blurry, but I think you'll get what I'm talking about is if you were to run handrail down this side, well, there's no landing right here. It's just kind of turned stairs, right? It's not a 3x3 landing. So when you get to this point, you're going to have to go flat and then come down this wall. And it's all going to have to be continuous when you have a setup like this. Now, if you were to put a solid landing right here, you could break it and then start over. But you can't in this particular situation. Here's an outside deck. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like it has 4 risers, so handrail would be required, as well as a landing across this. Well, where do you put the handrail? Well, technically, you need at least 1, depending on who your inspector is, and they might ask you for a second one because of how big this is. I would tell you, where are you most likely going to walk? If there's a door here, you're going to come down the middle, you're going to come down the side over here. You just put one right here, it leads over to your garage or something like that. If that's most likely where you're going to walk, put your handrail right there. Here would be handrail that's returned to the wall. A lot of people, a lot of times, this is a huge correction call that I make all the time, because people are redoing their house. They took the old handrail off, and they popped a new one on, and they didn't realize they needed to return it to the wall. So, well, the old one just kind of ended, right? It's like, well, technically it's supposed to be returned to the wall. I don't know why code books put it in there. I don't quite understand what the necessary need for it is. Maybe someone hurt themselves running up or down the stairs, And so they said, well, they all need to be returned to the wall now. And so it's literally just miter cutting or adding on a little piece of handrail that returns. That's it. It's just button into the wall. It can be a 90, it can be a 45. It can go however you want it to go as long as it returns back into that wall, and you should be good. Here is, again, just kind of an illustration showing it return to the wall, where it says right here, return to the wall. Here it's minimum 1.5 inches in between and 4.5 inch max projection, like we kind of talked about. So when it comes to handrail and guardrail, right, we kind of covered the basis, I think. We talked about guardrail. If it's over a 30-inch fall, you're going to need guardrail. 36 inches in height, no more than 4-inch gaps. When you're going downstairs, it can drop down to 34 and up to as much as 38 inches. When it comes to guardrail, your gap can be a little bit bigger, 4 3/8, but I would stick to that 4 or less if I was you. Just keep it the same, keep it equal. That would cover guards, and that's if you have over a 30-inch fall. I've had people where they're at 31 inches and they don't want to put up a guardrail, so they go and add some dirt outside. Put the tape down there, it's 30 inches or less. They don't have to put guardrail up. So that's kind of a way around it. I've seen people do that on their front entries quite a bit. Maybe they got a rock bed right there and they put some more rock in there. Just kind of a way to squeak around the code book a little bit. And then on handrail, it just needs to be continuous, it needs to return to the wall. It's required on 4 or more risers. And should be good to go. Make sure it's continuous. To back up one little bit here though on the 4-inch gaps, when we're talking about stairs, and to make sure that we're kind of covering the 4-inch gap part, your riser heights, even though we're kind of only talking about guardrail or handrail, we're talking about a little bit about that 4-inch sphere max. Your risers and your stairs, sometimes they're open risers. You can't have gaps over 4 inches. So as soon as you get above 30 inches, make sure you put a bar in there or a piece of wood or something. Maybe you want them to be open to let snow through or rain or water. Make sure there's something in there so you don't have over 4 inches. And make sure you're covered all the way around for safety purposes. Wouldn't want you guys getting called on some weird code requirement or something that you didn't know about. So that should cover handrails and guardrails. And we covered stairs and landings. So that should kind of cover the components of that safety need when it comes to fall hazards and going up and down stairs.